I must say, there's a growing list of products that I just despise working on because they are just so complicated. In the just the disassembly and reassembly to do a minor thing becomes a really major job, and this has got to be one of the worst of them all. Maybe not the worst, but it's up there. It's in the top 10. I don't enjoy these ones at all. Let's check it out. So this is a Toshiba. It's a DVR7. I think that's how they pronounce it. Toshiba, not Toshiba, or Toshiba, as we like to call them. This is a combination VCR recorder player and a DVD recorder player that'll record on both the DVD+r, RW, and plus RRW discs. There's a remote for it. I've been told that this unit eats tapes. So let's pop this thing apart. This one's actually a client-owned machine. Just wait till they get the bill for this one. They'll wish they never brought it. No, seriously. There was a lot of time spent on this thing. The video is long enough, but there was much more time just on the disassembly of this. You'll wait till you get in. When I get it, it's a nightmare. And it's about 10 years old, almost 10 years old. October 2010. It's made in China, of course, like everything else. You know, we went from one extreme to another where there was a period of time where VCRs were really relatively easy to service. You could take them apart and put them back together in about 15 minutes. Not so with this one. This has got so many screws and sub-assemblies that have to come out. You got to pull the DVD portion out before you can do anything else. And then if you want to test it, you got to hook everything back up because it won't operate with anything disconnected on it. I mean, they really, in the last few years of VCR production, they were not designed to be serviced at all. They were designed so that if they broke, other than cleaning the heads, you threw them out. And you'll see once I get into this thing, it's just an absolute nightmare inside. So let's just plug the unit in. Let's see what it does. And that's what it does. There's no motor operation other than the loading motor. Drum motor doesn't attempt to start. Capstan motor doesn't run. And it proceeds to eat the tape. I've just removed the disc. I'm just going to try loading the tape again and see what it does. What the hell? Now this thing's turning on. That's a strange problem. It almost sounds like a mode switch problem. You know, the way that this thing's behaving right now. You notice I called it right now. I called it a mode switch problem before I even get into it. Just from the way this thing is behaving, it sure looks like that's the problem. Okay, capstan motor's turning. Capstan motor's not turning now. If I turn it by hand, it's turning, but it's capstan motor's not turning, but it did when I turned it on there. Very weird problem. And the drum, of course, initially didn't work, and now the drum is turning on. This is a really weird problem on this. Could be a mode switch, could be a power supply problem, could be a number of different things. The problem with the cheap crap that this is that as you notice, everything's soldered on. There's no there's no plugs to undo anything, so it makes these things, there's plugs over here, but it makes these ones really difficult to try and do any work on, because this deck here is actually physically soldered down to the main board on these things. These were at the time when VCRs became an unserviceable item with the generation of machine like this, unfortunately. But we'll do what we can on this. I don't know how much the owner of this wants to spend, because when you get problems like this, of course, it can get relatively expensive when you have to start unsoldering headers to take parts out, to take the board out and stuff. But we'll plug away at this and see whether I can figure out what the problem was. At this point, I have no clue what's causing the fault on this. Now, I don't have a clue what it is on this one, just because of how the symptom was like that. I suspect it might be a mode switch problem, because mode switches, when they get dirty, what happens is as the mode switch rotates, it's a rotary encoder switch, as it rotates, if the contacts are oxidated or dirty, it causes voltage spikes that go back to the CPU that controls the unit, and can cause all kinds of weird problems with the mechanism. And this has got weird problems, because initially the drum motor wouldn't come on, and then after operating it a couple times by hand, the drum motor then started up, but the capstan motor will only run in reverse, but only when the tape is being pushed in. It doesn't operate in the forward direction, and it doesn't operate during the unloading cycle. So it's weird, and that's what kind of draws me to the mode switch. A unit that really is not designed to have any service work done on it. You see how it's built. It's one main circuit board. I'm just looking to see whether I can pull the board out, like pull the whole unit out with, leave the bottom and take the unit out as a complete chassis without taking all the individual components off. I like to be able to get the bottom off of it, but the way this thing's designed, it's not really designed to be serviced. Okay, that's got the DVD player separated. Here's our power supply over here. I'm curious as to any of these caps that may have failed on this thing. I don't see any bulged tops, but that really doesn't mean much these days, because they can go high ESR without necessarily having a bulging cap or bulging top. Probably the first thing to do on this, though, is to check this power supply out and see. I highly doubt that that's the fault, though. The capstan motor turns backwards, it doesn't turn forwards. But we have to take this out to get the rest of the chassis out anyway. There's the board loose. Power is off. We can check the ESR on these caps first. And at least this one unplugs here. It's soldered down on the bottom of the on the bottom of the power supply. As you can see, this is what a lot of these things are. These connectors are just soldered down on one side. So I'll grab the ESR meter and we'll take a look at these caps in the secondary here, because it could be one of these has gone bad. I hope that's what it is, because servicing something in here is going to be very difficult. I figure I better show you guys me measuring a few of them here, just so you believe that I've measured them. Because you know how it is on the internet, if you don't show it, it didn't happen. But so far, I haven't found any that are suspect. 3300 at 0.13. Yeah, it should be okay. It's a 3300 at 6 volts, so 3300 falls between 1000 and 4700. So 0.12 and 0.23, and you see here it was, what did I say it was here? 0.2, so that should be okay. I haven't found any that are looking bad. What about this little blue one over here? 0.2, and it is a 1000 at 16 volts. So 0.09, a little bit higher than. I don't think it's going to cause the problem though. And then there's another one here through the capacitor, through this coil. So I pulled the cap to measure it, and it's testing good. And then I noticed that these here aren't even high frequency, high temperature caps. They're all 85 degree, which is unusual for a switching power supply. I normally expect to see 105 degree rated caps in these type of power supplies, but these are all 85. So this thing must be operating at a relatively low frequency as far as switch mode power supplies go. Either that or they're just all bad. But I mean, literally, the ESR is testing good on all of them, so I don't think it's a capacitor problem. Plus the fact that the DVD player works, it's just the VCR portion that doesn't work. So that's leading me to think something in the capstan motor circuit is not working properly. So I'm just going to put this power supply back. I don't think there's a problem with that. Got to get the board out on this thing and see whether we can figure out what it is. Especially one where there's no service data available. There's no schematics available for it. There's no parts available. It's the problem with all the modern electronics. Is just there's no serviceable parts available. These things were never intended to be fixed, and if they broke down, they were just intended to be tossed away like everything else that's made lately. I ran into a strange problem at work. I was putting in a 4K cable box, and I couldn't get a 4K image. It was on an RCA branded TV, and on those TVs you actually have to select the mode for the HDMI input. It has to be set to HDMI 2, and out of the box I guess this thing was set to HDMI 1.4. I couldn't figure out why. I couldn't get a picture, and I was going through the menus and HDMI mode, what? 1.4 and 2, switch it to HDMI 2. Of course the picture comes on, but that one there threw me for a loop for a few minutes. Never run into that problem before. Must be just the cheap TVs that you have to select it, because all the better ones do it automatically. Try to figure out what way is the best way to get this thing out of here. I think there's still a screw into the board that's holding the board down somewhere. Let's go find it. A bunch more screws, and the back comes off. We're one step closer to lifting the board out. One last screw behind the drum. We may be able to lift this thing apart. One more screw holding them. There's a sub chassis under this thing, and there's a screw holding that in place. I wonder if I just take off this little circuit board here, whether I can leave that sub chassis behind. Two on this side. But a lot of work to take this chassis out. So herein lies the problem and why these are such a piss poor design as far as serviceability goes. You've got the motors connected here by multi-connect wires and multi-connect ribbons, and the board is held in place by a couple screws. So in order to get the board off to do any work on the chassis below, you've got to take off these connectors, or at least bend the wires enough that you've got some clearance. I might be able to get a bit of clearance on one of them, but just even get to the mode switch, which is where the heck is it on this thing? Loading motors here. It operates a cam gear. Okay, the mode switch is right. The mode switch is right here on this unit here. So you can get at that just to clean the mode switch, which could cause this type of a problem. Mode switch being dirty definitely could cause this type of an issue. That's what I'm thinking. Because mode switches do cause strange problems like this. But just to get this thing, I don't know if I can get enough slack. We'll try. That screw. Take out this screw over here. I don't know if there's going to be enough slack in these wires to allow the board to be lifted out high enough that I can get at the mode switch. Maybe. There it is there. Can I take the top off? I actually have to remove it. I may have to unsolder it. Oh, there it is. It's apart. So it did pop apart. It is, looks to be pretty gungy actually. Yeah, it does look to be pretty. I don't know if you can see the contacts in there, but if I get some light in there, I might be able to see it a bit better. But the contacts down here do look to be, yeah, they do look to be pretty dirty. Let's get some cleaner in there, and we'll try cleaning that switch. I'm going to use some deoxit D100. This is the pure non-diluted deoxit in the squeeze bottle with the applicator. That way I'm not spraying the regular D25 around and getting on other things and wasting it. This way I just can control exactly how much I use. I only have to use a drop or so.
Dirt in there.
Makes it last a lot longer than the aerosol cleaner. And it works. I mean, it cleans very well. As you'll see, just wipe the contact, wipe the surface here with the Q-tip, and we're going to get a lot of dirt and oxidation. And I'll put another drop on there and actually just use the metal applicator to kind of scratch the surface a bit, just to make sure that we get good connectivity between the switch contacts and the base. funny, I'm watching cars go up and down the road on my security monitor, and I don't hear them because there's so many electric cars in my neighborhood. There's got to be, just in my block alone, there's probably 4 or 5. I'm trying to think here. 1, 2, 3. Oh, about 7, including mine, just in my neighborhood, like in the one block, just on my street. And I'm watching all these cars going up and down the street, and I don't hear a peep out of them because they're so quiet. This connector here, this is the one that connects both the capstan and the drum motor. It actually connects to the capstan motor, and then from the capstan motor there's another jumper wire that goes up to the drum motor itself. So the capstan and drum drive IC, I think they're probably a combination IC right there on the motor. Either that or that's the drum drive IC, and the capstan motor drive IC is somewhere else. It might be underneath the rotor. Can't tell. Can't see it from here. This is one of these impossible to work on units. Right, so we'll try it with this mode switch cleaning and see whether that's made any difference to the operation of this device. The downside to this is I basically got to put the whole thing back together in order to be able to test it. Everything's got to be put together. That mode switch lines up with there's a slot in it, and it lines up with a hole in the gear. I'm just making sure that it is meshed, and it is. That pin, there's a little gear down right below it here, the main cam gear, where my finger is pointing, right there. There's a hole in that gear, and the little peg from the little index key here from the mode switch actually slides down into a little hole in that gear. I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's right there. Okay, that little pin goes into that gear, into that hole. And that's how you know it's in the right timing. Put this screw back in. And one more screw over here. It's a plastic screw and a metal screw. As you can see, you don't get many chances to work on these before these wires start to break. You bend them a few times, they're going to start to break, especially right down in here. Going to inspect that, make sure that all these are soldered down. I tell you, it was when the designs like this started hitting the market, and I left before this was made because I think I said this one was made in 2010 and I got out of the business in 2003. But I could see the way that they were getting by 2003, how they were getting, and I decided it was time. The VCR was dead at that point anyway, and they were just making these things as cheap as they possibly could. I mean, this is one piece of stamped steel. That's all this is. One solid piece that's got a couple bends in it and a couple holes punched in it. But, yeah, I was sure glad I got out when I did. Like if I had been stuck servicing equipment right to the bitter end, I would have gone off the deep end. Just seeing how these things are made, like looking at the construction of this modern junk, and I say that everything is junk. I don't think there's many things that are made these days that can be called good quality, at least in consumer electronics. It's a different world when you're talking professional stuff, but in the consumer electronics world, I don't think you can say that there's many, if any, things that are actually made with any type of quality whatsoever in them. They're all designed for price point, and they're designed to be manufactured and sold as cheap as possible, and not designed to have any type of serviceability whatsoever. Remember, this has to go underneath this bracket here, like that. But it sure makes me glad that I got out of this racket when I did. I know many service techs stayed right till the brutal end. I kind of feel bad for those guys. But I'm sure glad myself that I got out when I did. Okay, I wonder if this thing will actually power up without having to put the DVD player back into it. I don't know if it will or not, so we'll try it. I may have to put everything else back together. I'm going to have to plug the DVD player in, at least at a minimum, because the power light's flashing, which means it's detecting something's not right. It's looking for the DVD player. Which is another problem with the design. Ha ha ha! The capstan motor's turning. That's a good sign. Damn, this thing might actually work. Let's try playing a tape. It plays! Yes, so interesting problem. Mode switch. That's all I've done. That's the only thing I've done on this. Interesting problem, but it looked like a mode switch when I first got into it. Just the way it was behaving. It was behaving like mode switches behave. Now the fun part. Putting all these blasted screws back in and putting this thing back together. As you can see, there's a pile of screws that came out of this thing. There's even a little plastic protector that goes down over one of the screws that holds the circuit board in place. I'm going to undo, get the power off here. I'm just going to remove the DVD recorder portion again so I can start putting some of the screws in. Get this thing back together. He's back. been a guy walking around my neighborhood all day with an aerator trying to aerate everybody's lawn for them. He showed up at my door today and I told him to hit the road. The weeds don't need a hand to grow. They grow enough on their own. Don't need to aerate the lawn anymore. It sounds like he's back. That goes, the shorter screw goes in there. But I kid you not, the guy walks around with his aerating machine and leaves it running, parks it out in front of the house, leaves the engine running, and he goes up and knocks on the door, and then says, "Oh, I'm just in the neighborhood. I'm aerating your neighbor's lawns for them, and I thought maybe you might like me to do yours as well." He said, "I'll only charge you $60 cash, and I'll aerate your front and back lawn, or whatever his price is." And he walks around the neighborhood every day and does that. And I see him all the time out here. He just walks from one house to the next. And I'm sure some people tell him to hit the road, but I guess enough of them hire him on the spot. And yeah, there he goes, walking up the street with his machine. I'm watching him on my cameras. It's like 6:20 at night, it's getting dark out there, and here's this guy still trying to drum up business. He came to my house around 10, I think it was 10:30 this morning. So when he showed up at my door. Okay, we're getting this thing together. I got a few screws left. I got to put the front panel on now. All the stupid places to put a chassis screw. Another black screw here, a plastic screw. There it is. See, some of these are metal screws and others are plastic, depending on what they're going into. Okay, the unit itself is, other than the top, is back together. And there it's playing. And there's the video off of it. Let's try the DVD player portion now. Eject the tape. Like I can play this disc, at least momentarily. Looks like it's playing to me. Sound. Yep, that sound.
Yes, there have been differences between America and Europe.
Play. I'm not going to play this for more than a few seconds, but there it is. It's playing the DVD. We'll stop it. I'm going to go back to VCR, and we'll try. I'll put that Bose tape back in, I guess. I can try my color bars. And we'll go back to VCR. Just going to press the button here for VCR. Color bars. Forward search. Reverse search. Stop. Rewind. Fast forward. back to play. This one's fixed. Only thing left to do is clean the heads. Just standard isopropyl alcohol. Heads really aren't dirty on this one. We'll do the same for Q-tip for the audio head. There. Heads are clean. We'll just put another tape in just to make sure that everything is still working.
Oh, now that produces all the bass for the entire system. Really? Now, you know those big speakers you told me about?
Yeah.
What'd you like them?
Well, they got great bass. I love to crank it up when I can.
Here.
Yep. They had some pretty corny sales videos. Okay, that about does it for this one. Another satisfied customer. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one real soon. Bye for now.